You've been doing things to us on social media. Like everyone is just envious of you. You're doing this thing, the romanticizing your life.
Oh, yes. Yes.
What is this?
Well, I'm trying to save money.
But you're making it look so glamorous.
I think so. I think that I discovered the difference between luxury and opulence.
Oh, okay.
Right. So luxury could just be like how my house smells, whereas opulence could be, buy these diffusers and this and this. So I've been like learning to distinguish that, and I've been trying to bring more and more luxury into my life.
That's interesting. So romanticizing is just like doing what you can with what you have and making that romantic. Is that what it is?
Yes. Doing what you can, but more of the things that you love mostly. Yeah. So some things I save up for. Some things are an actual splurge.
Yeah.
Like the trips.
Like the trips.
The trip is splurge.
Yeah.
Like you have to plan it and be like, next year we're going on a luxury train. I need to be saving up for that. But the other smaller things like candles, cooking at home, making your house nice. You travel, you buy some baskets, you put them on the wall. Like those are simple, easy things, but they make your space so much nicer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And make you not depressed while you're saving. Because how do you reconcile these two things?
Saving is depressing?
What? Trying to spend money and you're telling me not to. So, but at the same time, you're living a life of.
No, I don't think I'm actually one of those people who says don't spend. If you actually consume my content, I talk about spending intentionally. Because I found like a lot of us will spend money on things that are not important to us, but because our family does it or our friends are doing it. Like a classic example I like to say is I used to club a lot, but when I actually sat down and looked at myself, I hated the clubs. I hate how my hair smells afterwards, the noise. And then you drink a little bit too much. And then the drive home was like so much anxiety because I've been drinking. And then, so at some point, I think for some time last year, I just said, you know what, I'm not going to club anymore.
Yeah.
And so I don't go to the club. You won't find me in a club.
It might also be the age thing, Jane.
It could be also, but like, I just didn't like it so much. Like, I would rather like be in restaurants, have conversation, good wine, like softer things. And so that's what I spend on. I won't spend on things that I don't want just because the crowd wants.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you spend, but spend intentionally.
Yeah. And be true to yourself.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I want to take you back now to you're being true to yourself. The last time we were on the set together, we were trying to tie
head wraps. Hey, I know many lives.
We have both lived many lives.
Yes.
So at that time, I was doing Fresh in the Morning and you were fashion blogger extraordinaire. The fashion blogging scene in Zambia was popping at the time. There were quite a few of you guys.
Was, right?
It's because it was Mafasho.
Yeah, Mafasho was killing it. Yes, they were the queens. Hey.
Then there was you. There was, who else was
Peter My Life.
Yes, Peter My Life.
Like in men's fashion.
So anyone who says that people just started,
no.
It's been
work.
Yes.
It's been work. It's also nice to see the evolution, right?
Yes.
Like others dropped out of the fashion scene, others pivoted like me. But then there's like the Peters who stayed within that fashion scene, but then like grew into like store owners and all these things, designers.
Yeah. It's so nice to see.
Yeah.
So take us back to that time. You're on Blogger. What was the name of your blog? What were you doing?
The Sizzle Cafe. I don't even know. Girl, I don't know. I think I did a poll because I used to actually, when I started blogging, I used to blog for MTV Staying Alive.
Okay.
That's how I learned about the blog scene.
How did that come about?
Staying Alive?
Yes.
I told you I've lived many lives. So that was birthed from, I used to work with trendsetters. And then trendsetters, after they closed down, they pivoted and became Media 365, like same owners and stuff. But they were still doing work within that behavioral change, HIV. So they did, they were launching Sugar the first time.
Right,
the first season of Sugar with Lupita Nyong'o.
Yes.
Yeah, so they were, and we were already affiliated. We had already been working there, volunteering. So they invited us to come on as a street team for Sugar, like build up towards launching. And so we did like a lot of like blogging and things like that. And that turned out to be my first paid blog gig. It turned out to be like a 4-year project for me.
Wow.
Yeah. So I used to blog a lot every month. I would send out blogs and things like that. And then while I was at school, because I went to school in India.
Okay.
I was like, I want a voice for myself. And I like the clothes, the Indian clothes, like trying to modernize them.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So I started blogging fashion for myself, but also to show like my family, like this is what we wear, this is where we went. I didn't know what lifestyle blogging was, but I think I was actually a lifestyle blogger.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's like how like it flows into each other.
What do you think were the key things that you learned from the MTV Staying Alive days that like you brought into now your blogging? Because you like I was saying, like the everyone was trying to be a fashion blogger, but you guys stood out. So there was obviously something that you were doing right. And it must have been, now you're saying about MTV, there must have been something that you learned there that you brought into it.
Honestly, I think it's consistency. And it's something I've been thinking about a lot. Like what makes you stand out in anything that you do? It's the consistency. I think the last post I've just done, if you've looked at my Instagram, it's a reel that says there's people who have half your talent, half your connections. The differentiating factor between those people and you with all your talent or your connections, but you're not doing anything, is they actually go out and do something and they're consistent.
Yeah. I felt like I was in church. Like, why are you condemning me?
Yeah. I think with Staying Alive, with MTV Staying Alive, it was like speaking a language that obviously my audience wants to hear. So it would be like, what are the young people talking about in terms of relationship, in terms of sex and like alcohol and lifestyles and things like that. So I would pay a lot of attention, and then also just because you needed to submit a blog every 2 weeks.
Right.
So I was just consistent. And that's something that I think I've taken throughout, even with the finances. Like my feed is consistent.
Yes,
you will get posts every week.
Yes.
Yeah.
Consistency. So MTV Staying Alive, you went to India, you decided to become a lifestyle blogger, even though you didn't know that that's what it was. And then what were you doing with that blog?
With that blog, I was literally just sharing my journey. I didn't know it then, but I was learning.
Yeah.
Learning how to find my voice and how to speak to my audience, but also just learning the ropes, like collaborations, how to position things. I feel like I'm a very mainstream sort of content creator, with be it a blog or my feed, my Instagram and stuff, my fashion. I'm quite mainstream. I'm not like...
What do you mean when you say...
I think I'm like, how do I say? I like things that are quite popular.
Okay.
But then you find that people like my fashion were like very quirky.
Yes.
And like a little bit different, a little bit eccentric. And so there was a point where I would always try to emulate that.
Right.
Do you remember the era of the white war or the gray war?
Yes.
And everybody was doing that. Everybody became a minimalist. And just finding the confidence to be like, okay, Jane, that's not you. But if you go back, there's a few photos.
Where you tried to do that.
Yes.
So you were trying to find your way.
Yes. Like there's this beauty that's there in like the not popular, the not... Do you know, like the thing that's not mainstream, the thing that's different, but also it's okay to be mainstream. It's okay to talk to like ordinary people because the majority of the people are ordinary anyway. Yeah. So just finding my voice and being comfortable in that.
That's interesting because that makes you more saleable, even though maybe that's not what you're trying to do, but it helps you gain
commercial. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It does.
And I think it's something a lot of people struggle with because they want to feel different.
Yes. but also the difference, it's good to be different if that is who you are. But if you're a regular Jane, just be regular Jane.
Yeah.
It's okay to
be authentic.
Yeah.
Authentically yourself. Yeah, that's interesting. So do you think that's how you got the numbers so quickly? What was it, do you think, that drew people to you?
I think that I got the numbers because they could relate. Of the blogging scene back then, I think I was the only plus size girl. Even though I look at those photos and I'm like, what plus size are you talking about? But apparently I was plus size.
Yeah.
And I was still finding clothes in this same market. Back then it was like, oh, you can't find clothes in Zambia. Anybody would ask, that's nice, where'd you get it? Oh, I bought it in the UK. I bought it here. But also I think we built trust. I think a lot of my audience has grown with me.
Yeah.
Some of them came with me from the Staying Alive days. Some of them started with me when I did the fashion and the head wraps, but most of them are still the same audience who are with me even now in the finance space. So I think people, because we built trust and they feel like they know the person, I'll start selling sneakers next, and
they'll still follow you.
And
so this is what I wanted to go on to next, because then you rebranded to the finance, like you say, which most people think these are like two vastly different things. Fashion and finance is just like...
Yeah.
So how did that... and I've heard you talk about it. I've heard you talk about the fact that you thought that you were going to be a creative. What did you envision for yourself? What did you think you were going to be?
I thought that I would work either in film. I have a notebook from 2011? I have a notebook from 2011. And Cindy Trim had come to do a conference at New Government Complex. And she said, write down the vision, the thing that you're going to be. And I wrote in there, media mogul. I thought I would be on TV. I thought I would be on radio, which I've done.
Yes.
But yeah, I envisioned myself like production, working barefoot, fashion this side, like cutting up cloths and things. Yeah, but like I feel like I'm still doing that, but just not in the way that I thought.
We'll come to that. Okay, so the pivoting to finance. How did that switch happen? And you've done TED Talks, like it's well documented. You've spoken about the fact that after you got your divorce and then, it flipped. But I've never quite thought that we had like the light bulb moment. What was the light bulb moment for you to say like, I'm changing and this is what I'm going to do?
What was the light bulb moment? I don't think it was like when you think about like rock bottom or those epiphanies, I think we envision it to be like a minute where it's like, it has happened. I think for me, it was like a period of time. I was really, really like down in the dumps. I was depressed. I was going through a separation, baby, broke, all that.
Yeah.
And then I would Facebook started doing the memories. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Facebook started doing the memories, and the things I was posting and the things I was saying, I was either embarrassed, not so much the pictures, but
you were embarrassed about seeing the things.
The conversations. They felt like in a place where I was like in my 20s with a child going through a divorce, the conversations felt shallow. Oh, what are we doing tonight? Da, da, da. And even the English was, how you spell da. So it took me a while, but around that, I was rethinking my life, I guess. I was rethinking my life. I was rethinking this big debt that I had. And I was looking at the memories that I was receiving, and I started deleting some of them. But then I started thinking about what memories do I want to have next year?
Right.
And so I made a decision that I wanted, once I start getting memories, I should either learn something, or I should smile, or I should laugh.
Yeah.
And so I started sharing like how I was feeling in the moment. I remember my first few posts were of a trip that I went to in Mongo. Like we went to Mongo, we went to Kalabo, we had fish.
Yeah.
So I shared some of those, and like people were like, "Oh, Mongo," da, 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 da. Like people kind of caught on. And it started from me sort of like, I was keeping a diary for myself, honestly. Just trying to be positive for myself. And then along there, I got the courage to share some of my money journeys.
Yeah. I was actually going to say, was it scary?
Yes. Because people see you on social media and they have a view of who they think you are.
Right.
Which possibly we kind of are. But even just the people around us will be like, oh, you can't tell people you're in debt.
Yeah.
So even then, I didn't say like, oh, I'm in debt, I'm going on this journey. I would just share like, oh, did you know that there's this savings account? Or I found out that if you're paying down debt, you actually have to write to the bank to take the money. Otherwise, it will just sit and you won't do anything. And so I started sharing that like motivation for myself and my lessons. And then people started catching on, and then I would get inboxes. That was the most surprising. I think I had gone to Kenya on a program, so I didn't post for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I came back and I found so many like inboxes of people saying, "Oh, where have you been? I've been waiting. Oh, your Monday motivations." And I'm like, "Oh, so there's an audience."
Yes.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So that's how the pivot happened. It wasn't like so intentional, but I was just sharing from an authentic place, and I found a community.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. Authenticity. So
Yeah.
Consistency, authenticity. We're learning some lessons here.
Yes.
But at this time, you were still working in a very corporate environment. I'm interested in, as women showing up in the workplace, it's hard enough proving yourself in certain environments. But then you also had this second side of you that was like the fashion side, which obviously it was public, so people knew about that. How was that like in the workplace, traversing that?
Yeah. I used to dress up. I feel like I still kind of do.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about it like I've completely abandoned fashion, but I feel like finance is like cross-cutting. So yeah, I still like to look good, to look a certain kind of way. So I used to dress up at the office. But the funny thing is people didn't know about my fashion blog.
Really?
The people who started catching on is when I went in with doing the head wraps. Do you remember that phase?
Yes.
So the head wrap phase, I was actually in debt.
I remember because when you came to do the head wraps, you were like, I think you were supposed to be at work. And then you had to like
run away. Thank you. At least I'm not at the company.
Sorry.
Yeah. So I was like heavily in debt, but it's interesting how you have all these different skills that actually like Stephen Bartlett was talking about skill stacking.
Yes.
And like I finally understand it now looking back, because at work I was doing sales and marketing. And then I needed to pay off debt, so I needed to earn more money. And so I started using this fashion blog of this fashion community to like sell myself.
Right.
So I was using all these tools from different places to, build the business. So what I would do is at the weekends, I would book head wraps business. I would like book kitchen parties.
Yeah.
If you're going somewhere, I'll be like, do you know your jeans will look good with the head wrap? Let's, so people would pay me. And then I would take photos. And then during the week, I would just be posting.
Yeah.
Like, this is what we did. This is what we did. This is what we did. And by the weekend, would have booking.
Yes.
And then it was just a cycle. So it looked like I was really posting about so much fashion, but really I was like selling and marketing.
Yeah.
And I was earning an income to pay off this big...
And so this is what I was going to say, because I think a lot of the people who started the blogging at that time, and I used to blog way back when, a lot of people couldn't figure out how to pivot and try to create an income. But it sounds like it was about income from the very beginning. Like even the MTV days, they were paying you.
Yeah.
And then when you're doing the fashion, like you say, like dressing people and all of that sort of thing. So have you always had that then? Like it's trying to make money out of the extra things that you do?
No, necessity, guys. When you're broke and you can't go ask your parents for money because you're embarrassed, you find ways. And then again, I think it's a little bit of... There's a little bit of luck or opportunity meets preparation in this case. So I had some of the skill sets. I knew how to sell. I had some of the like the digital skills already from my MTV days. And then I had the audience. So it was like these things coming together for me. And then at some point it was like, okay, I need money. Because at that point, I think I was taking home like a 900 kwacha or something. I needed the money. So it was like, how do we make money? Okay, that person had paid you for the head wraps. Can we advertise and actually be intentional about getting people? So it's like out of necessity. So yeah, I kind of figured it out. The MTV gig was really, I think, the thing that opened up, because they came in right off the bat offering a payment. Yeah. They were like, okay, we'll pay you this many dollars, this many pounds per blog, and you have to do 2 blogs every month. So I was on it.
Yeah. So it was already like, whatever I do, I can get paid for it.
Yeah. And then it was also, we also didn't know the different ways that you could monetize.
Right.
So it was also a lot of like watching what the other bloggers were doing, the international ones. Yes.
Yeah.
What are they doing? Okay, brand deals. Brands in Zambia did not know us. They did not think we were valuable. So what can you do? Merchandise.
Yes.
Services. So that's the way you go.
Yeah.
It's so much easier now.
It's easier now?
Yeah.
Is it?
It's easier now. There's more competition, yes. But in terms of like, I feel like the corporate understand the power of like the influencers, the communities that they have, both micro, macro, they understand that dynamic.
Okay. That's encouraging, because I think I hear a lot of people saying that they don't. So do you think that maybe people don't understand how to approach firms?
Yes.
Like what would you say is the best way to go about it?
So for the people who have figured it out, they have figured out that if I'm going to go to a corporate or a big brand to collaborate with, I have to show them what they are going to get out of it.
The value.
It's not just I'm a pretty face and I've got 100,000 followers. No. If you have 100,000 and 5,000 likes, but your people don't buy, the people don't listen to you, then you literally have no influence whatsoever.
Yeah.
They'll gossip and they'll like and they'll move on. So it's understanding how I'm going to speak to a corporate. If I go to ZRA or if I go to Max BD, what am I giving them? What will they get in return? So it shouldn't be about me anymore. It's about them. Yeah. This is what I can do for you. And in exchange, this is what I want.
Yeah. So it's get out of your own head.
Yes. And show value.
Yes. Give value. Okay. So at this point now you've become like a financial guru of sorts. Ish, yeah. Now, this is a term I'm very afraid of. The sort of term of like guru or expert, or I know a lot of people say things like these people that will tell you what to do with your like motivational speakers. These are sort of terms that I'm very afraid of. But it's, I think, something that you've had to sort of embrace in building your brand. What is your relationship to being called a financial guru?
I don't call myself a guru. I called myself an expert. Okay. But I found that was a name that I had to pick and embody, because if you don't call yourself something, people will name it for you.
Right.
Everybody is a brand, whether you're public or not. And if you don't own your name, if you don't own your space, other people will own that space for you. So I was sharing all these things. Yes, it was motivational. Yes, it was learning. And for me, it was like I was keeping diaries for myself to refer back to. But people started calling me a motivational speaker, and I don't like that. I didn't like that.
I would hate it.
Yes. I didn't like the motivational speaker thing.
What didn't you like about it?
Because there was, at that time, there was this blow up of motivational speakers, and so was speaking, and then it would be like, oh, look at the motivational speakers, he's motivating us, but look at the way they live and things like that.
Because it becomes about the person and not the message that you're...
Exactly.
And I think that's problematic. I don't know.
Yeah, I do feel like, in a way, I mean, we are personal brands, so you can't really take out the personal. But also, I didn't want to position as something I was not. Right. I was in debt, and I was trying to pay off debt. So I didn't want to stand here as a motivational speaker and make it look like I'm a millionaire. I am not. I'm still living in my parents' house because I can't even pay rent because I'm paying down this debt. So that's why I looked around and decided to call myself something. Yeah. So it was like, okay, if I don't want to be called a motivational speaker, this is how these people have received me, because they don't know the thing that I'm doing. Okay. So tell them what you're doing and give them a name that they can refer to you. So I think I started calling myself a financial expert, a personal finance expert, and people caught on. So
what is I'm fascinated by your thought processes and how
even me.
Because I'm listening to you speak, and I know that sometimes with hindsight, things are like clearer.
Yes.
But I'm interested in how you iterate in the moment, like as you're going. Do you have a personal coach? Do you have people? Do you read books? Like, how do you go about evaluating, like looking back at this is what I've done, evaluating it, and then deciding on how you're going to switch? What is that process like for you?
I think now I have my board of directors, albeit quite unofficial.
Okay.
But there are people I refer to. My best friend is like she's not on social media, so people don't know her that much. Once in a while, every so often I post her and my bonus babies, but she's not big on social media, but she's been like because we've been friends like, it's 24 years now. So she's been like a big voice of reason and accountability and things like that. But then along the way, I have collected mentors, sponsors, coaches, mostly unofficially.
Right.
Now, I'm a lot more intentional about investing in myself. Right. So because I'm trying to go somewhere, I have actually paid somebody to be a business coach. But that's quite recent.
Right.
What I was doing then is I was just like, this is what I need to do. And I just go with it.
Yeah.
And I'll be doing that. And then now I'm done. So now that's the next goal is that. And people are like, oh, you've pivoted.
Like, I just changed.
Yeah.
But I've heard you speak about vision boards and stuff. How does that work?
Yeah. So it actually started like we sort of kind of knew, like broad strokes, like, oh, want to go here, maybe be an exco member and things like that.
Daydreaming in your mind.
Yes. And then would share it mostly with me and Melody. And then now there's like a little community of my friends, like there's 3 other ladies. So now we're a lot more intentional about, even now we're like, okay, guys, what are the next 2 years going to look at? What are you working on? What do you want to achieve? I'm going back to school, or no, I'm building my business. I want to be taken more seriously. So things like that. Yeah. So we hold each other accountable. But for me, like looking back, I just knew. For me, the first step was I needed to get out of debt. So I just started feeding myself. Podcasts weren't that popular then, so I was on YouTube a lot.
Yes, you were.
And I had seen some TED Talk that the guy talked about how you have to feed yourself with what you want to grow in. So if you want to be good at law, you should not be reading medical journals. Yes.
Of course, yes.
But that's a lot of the stuff that we do, no? I want to be a really good business person, but on TV, I'm always watching fashion. I'm watching The Housewives. Nothing wrong with that.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
But is it feeding into where you want to?
Like you're a product of the things that you consume and the people that you spend time with.
Exactly. Yeah. Makes sense for a fashion person to be consistently watching the celebrities because they have to stay in the know.
Yeah.
But as a business person, unless your business is in that line, you have to feed yourself other things. So I was reading a lot of personal finance books. I was also reading a lot of personal development books.
Right.
Yeah. So I found like a few gurus online. Dave Ramsey, I consumed. Jay Shetty, I consumed.
I went through a Jay Shetty phase. Yeah. And then after some time, I was just like, I can't do this anymore.
No, he pivoted also and lost me.
Did he? Did he pivot? Maybe that's what it was.
I think he's pivoted into this love relationship talk. A lot of people, there's another guy I used to follow, Anthony O'Neill.
Yes.
He also started talking relationships and was just like, you've lost me.
I'm not interested anymore.
The core message has changed. But also there are people, they grow like us, right? Yeah, so I was consuming a lot of that. But it was also like, okay, if I'm consuming this, like what am I doing? And I was consuming a lot of that because I had a lot of extra time. So, I was going through a separation. People didn't know at work.
Yes.
I didn't have a car. So my dad would drive me to work.
Yeah.
Like he was literally doing a school run.
Really?
But then I would make him drive me to work like at 6. So I'd be in the office like 6:30, 6:40. And then I had this 2 hours to kill before 8.
Yeah.
And then also my other friend would give me a ride home. But then people shouldn't know. It's not her husband picking up anymore. So it would be like dad would drop me off at 6. I would be at the office 6:30.
Yeah.
And then I had the 2 hours. And then at the end of the day, between like sometimes would leave the office at 19. I also had the extra time. So I was consuming and making plans. I was trying to fill that space. I studied, I got my master's. Yes. Like it was a lot of positive things that happened during a hard time.
I remember meeting you during that time actually at Latitude. I think it was just after.
Latitude better just sponsor, give me a deal, because I practically lived there for years.
Yeah, no, I remember meeting you during that time, and I was like, something's off.
Yeah,
with Jane, but I can't figure it out.
Yeah.
There's two things. I'll start. The first one will be foundationally. You've spoken about accountability, but I've noticed in speaking to you that you've spoken also about like your parents, your mom and your dad, in terms of foundationally how important was how they sort of taught you to be, or how they envisioned your life or helped guide you. How important was that to you and how you become now?
I think my parents, I know they don't think so, but they were actually quite liberal. They were young parents. They traveled a lot. They were not like very strict. It was like there was a lot of emphasis in like working hard towards school. And because I got good grades, I was an A-star student. I feel like they let me get away with it.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah. But there was also this trust, like with anything at all. There was this trust that I knew, like, if I've done something wrong, the first person I'm calling is Dad.
Yes.
Even though he'll punish me.
That you were able to tell him.
Yes, because I feel like a lot of people couldn't. There was even a time where sometimes we wanted to go out, like to the club back then, and we were sort of like minors or stuff. Like people would come to my house, and then my parents would let us go out.
Yeah.
So the call on that side would be, we are at Jane's house.
Yes.
Yeah, so they were quite liberal, but if you ask them now, they say, no, they were strict.
So that I think maybe helped you to be open-minded in how you thought about doing things.
Also, it's allowed me, I think, in life in general to be able to take risks because I know like there's this safe space where I can go and recover and be like, oh my God, I messed up. And they'll be like, there's consequences, but you're good. Go. Yeah.
So important. So the second thing was another risk that you took was being so open about your divorce, especially with like building a lifestyle brand. You've spoken a little bit about having to hide, thinking you needed to hide it and that sort of thing. I think the world has moved on a little bit. I'm not sure if you would agree, but what was that like? How have you, you know, I listened to your TED talk and you literally started with that, you know, you opened with that. And I just thought, this is incredibly brave, but also very, you know, clever. I'm not saying that it was something that you were like consciously trying to trick people or whatever, but that vulnerability sort of draws people in.
Yeah, that's true. I think that not everybody deserves to know your story. It took me a while to talk about it. I think it took me like over 2 years to be able to say, oh, I'm actually going through a separation. And then people will be like, we know.
We've been you.
The other side told us.
Yes.
Yeah, so I would still hide it because like maybe the world has moved on, but there's still a lot of stigma. People still use it as a weapon.
Right.
People still will throw it in your face. Like,
will they?
Oh, you failed to maintain your marriage.
Yeah.
And it's like,
like, wow.
It wasn't just me.
No, yeah.
It was two people here. Yeah, but anyway, so I didn't talk about it for a long time. Even with my friends, I think I told them like after it had been like over a month.
Right.
Is when I told like the people that I felt like needed to know. But for like the rest of the world, I just kept it. I just moved on. And then at some point I was like, okay, I'm brave enough to do this. I feel like I'm strong enough. I think the first couple of times I told the story, I went, right.
You would though, like, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
But also I try and tell it so people know that I'm not like pulling things out of the air. Right. This is not academic. It's actually something that I have lived. I managed to pay off debt. I have started building wealth. So this is a road that I have walked. I'm a girl just like you, raised in Zambia, went to a government school. Well, some.
What government school did you go to?
I went to DK.
Okay.
Yeah.
At the time when they allowed girls.
Yeah. I went to St. Mary's, which is also Catholic but government.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I went to DK.
Okay.
Yeah. high achievers.
No? Yeah.
Yeah. So like I'm a regular person, just like you. And I've been through some of these things. You're sitting here thinking you're broke. I was a banker who took home 900 kwacha. Hello. So that's some of the reasons why I share, but also I try to be a little bit careful in that, like I've said, there's two parties. So how do I share my story authentically without dumping it on somebody else?
Right.
Or like just making him look bad? Because I feel like both of us were young.
Yeah.
Both of us.
And there's always, yes, as like you say, there's always two
sides to the story. Yeah. So I try and like mention it and move on.
Yes.
Let's not hang there, but I'm just letting you know that I know what I'm talking about.
It's always very complicated. And I think I spoke about this with Mukandi as well. I was saying I'm trying to write memoir. And, you know, you always have in your mind, when you're writing your memoir or your story, it's going to be adjacent to someone else's story.
Yeah.
And, you know, their truth might be different to yours, or you don't want to hurt them. You might think something of them, and you have to choose how you do it.
And people evolve. Like, so you're writing a memoir based on the thing that happened 5 years, 6 years ago. But the memoir will come out 7 years later. Are they still that person? Because once people read, that's who they are going to experience. But they've probably grown, evolved, changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing from you is that you want to always control your own narrative, tell your own story.
Yes.
Name yourself.
Yes.
Something interesting that I've heard you talk about is controlling the narrative about you in the workspace as well, being like entrepreneurial in the workspace.
Yeah.
How does it show up in the workspace? I was interested in hearing you talk about like your special slides that you that you use.
My PowerPoints be killing it.
Yeah.
I learned about signatures, not in the most positive way. I had a boss who would steal my work and wouldn't credit me.
Wow.
Back then, you know who you are. She would literally like give me a task. I would send it to her. And then I would hear like a week later, like, oh, so-and-so did an amazing job. And then one of my best friends was there. So he would be like, they asked her a question and she couldn't check.
Oh, they would ask the boss the question based on your...
Yeah, because it would go somewhere where I don't have access.
That's hilarious.
So I started, I can't remember who told me. Was it Patricia Luhanga? But like she told me about creating signatures in my work, how I present my work, how I talk and things like that, so that people would know.
Right.
Like even if my name's not on the document, they should look at it and be like, Jane was here.
Yeah.
So I started trying to build that. And part of building that is I have a very practical, simplified way of telling complex financial information.
So you break down the jargon. The people on Twitter would love you because they're trying to understand the economic situation right now.
Are they?
They're having a hard time.
Yeah. So I like try and simplify. Like I feel like even just like in my content, I try and make it like very, very practical, because I also hated like when I was going on this journey, I hated like I would watch something and they'll be like, create a vision. Yeah. Like start saving where? How? Like small steps. Tell me, save 10,000 kwacha, start with 100,000, and then next week build up to like, give me the simple, practical steps. So I try and bring that signature into my work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I try to be excellent. Like I try to make it so that like, even if you've heard me speak before and you hear me speak again, you shouldn't be like, we've heard this already. We're tired of this story.
Yeah, like vary it.
Yeah, I vary it and I speak to the audience that I'm speaking to. I don't assume that everybody is the same.
Yeah. But also you've managed to create relationships in the workplace where you have a flexibility about how you work. How have you done that?
I think being able to deliver has been the biggest thing. I had, while the year that I went through the separation, that first year, I also like bad and good. Like I got an opportunity to have somebody come in as a CEO.
Right.
And for the first time in my career, I felt seen.
Yeah.
I felt like she had given this trust to me. And so she was like, oh, you should also like build a brand outside. Like you be known.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she was like, don't be known as the person who's in this job, because if you leave the job, then your identity is erased.
Right.
So build yourself outside of this. And that's one of the reasons why I actually started talking about finance. I got my first
She gave you such a gift.
Yes. And I feel like these people, like, I call them angels in here because, like, they were just living their truth as well, but they have such a big impact.
Yeah.
So I started building myself outside of work. But even as I was building myself outside of work, I tried to make sure that I was delivering at work. So work will always be a priority if it's during working hours. I don't steal from the company. And if I deliver here, then I don't have to hide anything else that I'm doing. If you come and ask me, oh, how are you able to post? I will be like, these are all the content that I took at the weekend. They are all scheduled. It will go up. So even if you see it go up at 10 o'clock, I will be standing in front of the session. I'll be training and you will see me training and then you will see that it's gone out.
I'm not doing it on your time.
Exactly. So I feel like it's like building that trust and also looking out for the conflict of interest.
Right. And I think that you do this really well because I don't think I've ever known, apart from that first time, and it was because you had to tell me because we were like kind of working together. But I don't think I've ever known the places you've worked based on your social media presence.
I try and separate them.
Yeah.
I try and separate.
It's very clever. Okay, so you mentioned this thing. This is your book, Catching Fire. So you transitioned from all of that. You decided, I'm going to write a book. Why a book?
I always was going to write a book, guys. Like, the book has been in me since I was a kid.
Not everybody writes a book.
I know. Not everybody writes a book, but I'm also one of those who dreams up ridiculous things.
Yeah.
And then, like, I do it. Like, one day I woke up and I said, you know what? I think I'm going to be on radio. And then I had a radio show for 2 years. And then I was like, I think I'm going to be on TV. And then I had a TV show for a season.
Yeah.
So I always knew... I fancy myself an academic,
right?
And I always knew I would write a book. I have got thousands of books. My dad's been collecting books with me since I was young. And when we got the opportunity to travel, would always come back with books. I'm a lover of books. So I always knew I would write. But then COVID gave me the opportunity to actually write.
Yeah.
COVID and Melody. Because she was like, girl, she's a lawyer.
Yeah.
She was like, Jane, do you know that us were not essential workers? Remember the essential workers conversation?
Yes.
Yeah, because she was like, you're like a relationship manager. I am legal counsel. If they have to start kicking people out of these organizations, they can always outsource counsel. They can outsource it and they can also outsource you. So if they start kicking out people, we are not essential workers. What are we going to do?
So she pushed you to be like, you need to do something else.
Yeah, so I started talking about it. I talk about stuff a lot.
Right.
Because I believe that it builds accountability. So I started saying, I'm going to write a book. And I started writing. I wrote it in a notebook by hand, actually. So I started writing in a notebook. I'd write. We were in quarantine. I was in quarantine a lot, Mwanabibi. Like, there were no tests.
Oh.
Like, we didn't know. Like, it wasn't public knowledge, but there were no tests. So every time somebody exposed you, you had to quarantine for 2 to 3 weeks to show that you don't have the COVID. So I had a lot of alone time. And so I wrote. I signed up for online programs.
What kind of programs?
I did... What's that name? Oh, there was this Shama guy. He did this 7-day
I remember that.
something.
Yes, I did that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so from that, I actually birthed the 7-day online money masterclass. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes.
I used the same model. Like, no need to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you about the way that the book is set out and all of that. Like, how did you decide on that?
Yeah, so there was partly that. Like, I took that program and I did the 7-day, and I liked the idea of breaking down the financial information, because before that, I would see like a masterclass where they talk about everything. Save, invest, in 1 hour, 30 minutes, and then it's done. And then, it's a lot of information, and it leaves you with a lot of how questions, because you made this sweeping statement because you had to move on, understandable, but how? So the 7-day masterclass allowed me to dive deeper into topic by topic, but then also I would read a lot of devotionals. I'm a Christian, so I'm not one of those Christians who can open the Bible and just start reading. It has to be guided study for me.
Right.
So I would use a lot of devotionals, and I like how like the devotional will tell you today we are meditating, we're reading this, and this is what it's feeding. So I tried to bring that structure into the book. So it's 52 weeks. So it's like a devotional.
Yes.
Every week you get this is what we're doing. This is why we are doing it. This is how you're going to do it. And if you don't know, there's a template.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that. Tell me about the process of actually getting it published, like getting it printed out there, because it's notoriously difficult to get quality book done in Zambia.
So yeah, and it's an independent, I'm an independent publisher. So I wasn't signed to something I should explore for my next book.
Do you like the idea of being signed to an agency?
It's a lot more money and a lot less stress.
I'm and ahhing about how to, whether to go independent or to like sign with an agency and stuff. So.
I went the independent way because I feel like the independent way is the Zambian way.
Right.
I see it in music. I see it in fashion. I see it in blogging. I see it everywhere.
Yeah.
You're a fashion designer. First of all, you're the designer. You're the fabric shopper. You are the one who cuts. You sew. You market. You do accounting. You do everything yourself. So I did it the Zambian way. So I wrote the book. It took me maybe a year and a half to write the book.
Right.
And then in 2020, was it 2022? Yeah, 2022, like a friend of mine made a sweeping statement, Tamara. She made a sweeping statement. She's like, my babes, you've been talking about this book for a long time. Are you going to do it? Are you going to do it?
Yeah.
If you're not going to do it, just don't say it. And I don't think she actually realizes that because I think it was just sweeping in the moment. Yeah. But like I carried that home with me and I was like, you know what? Let me do it. So I typed it out because, like I said, I had written it in like handwritten.
Oh, wow. So your first draft was all written, like handwritten.
Still a dinosaur.
I love handwriting. I do love handwriting first because it helps you think. They say that there's the time between your brain and it's going in cursive that allows you more time to think than when you're typing. That's what they say.
Yeah. So I typed it out. And then I sent it to my friend Mukandi, who you had on the show.
Yes.
I know she's an amazing writer. Yes. And I sent it to her and she was like, I love it. She was like, I feel like you're holding back.
Ask you because that editing process is a part of the process that a lot of people
don't know about. Skip.
Yeah.
It's a lot. I have edited this book. Yeah, so I sent it to Mukandi. She did the first. I sent it to her for editing. Like, I've written the book. No, I didn't send it to her for editing. I sent it to her for proofreading.
Okay.
But she went into editor mode.
Of course she did.
She never even proofed it.
No.
There were still typos and mistakes, but she sent the whole document back with like comment, questions. What about this? Can we move this here? I saw on your social media. I remember there was a specific one where she said, your most popular post last year was so-and-so on the savings challenge. Can you bring that here? How did you?
And I think that we need to pause there because it's very important as like storytellers, writers, this part of the process, it illuminates so much. Like you think you're writing one book, you have to show it to someone. You absolutely have to show it to a developmental person. Proofreading is right at the end. And Mukandi did that because she's as a writer, she understands. Like it's right at the you want to write pretty words.
Yeah.
But it's not even about that. If your structure is not right.
Yeah. But also it needed to be my friend because she understood my voice.
Yes.
This book is not a formalized book. Like I said, I'm very simplistic. My words are very, very simple. So I wasn't trying to do English. Yeah. So she did that first draft. I rewrote the whole thing basically. I sent it back to her. And then it took us a lot of time. And I was telling myself that I'm going to I wanted to have a deadline for it. So I gave a deadline and I saw that she was swamped and she was like, okay, Jane, this deadline is unrealistic.
Yeah.
And so she did the second iteration of it, sent it back to me. And we looked at each other and we're like, okay, let's get an independent who's not our friend, who's actually going to drive you.
Yeah, based on, like actual, this is my job that I'm doing.
Yes. Yeah. So I had to be very intentional about finding somebody who I actually paid.
Right.
He sent me a quotation and I did half of it and he started the work. I sent it to him. He did the first thing Mukandi did.
Yeah.
He comments, questions, is this grammar correct? And we had to be like, this is the voice I'm using. So you might find some grammar that's not.
Yeah. You have to fight for your work, but it's like a give and take.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So he balanced me out and I took him a lot more seriously because I was a little bit scared of him. And with him, I think we went through it another 4 times or something. And he would be like, is this correct? This statistic, where did you get it?
Yes. He was checking the stats as well.
He was fact-finding.
I like it.
And after we did that now, I was like, okay, we need to launch it. We need a book.
Yeah.
And so then after that, he went into the proofing.
Right.
And everything. And the funny thing is, even after all that, we still found a typo on the first page.
It happens all the time. On the first. It happens all the time. Did you get it printed and published here in Zambia?
No. I love my people, but I couldn't. I had a certain quality. At the time, I had just picked up Michelle Obama's new book. I still haven't read it, but I had picked it up. Because I have this rule about investing in myself. So I have a budget for books, no matter what. So I picked up Michelle Obama's new book and I told myself, if my book ends up in Barnes & Noble or whatever international store and it's sitting next to Michelle Obama, they shouldn't be like, this one's Zambian.
Yes.
This one is American. No. So I wanted the quality to be good. So I paid a lot of money to different publishers to send me samples and da-da-da-da-da. And finally, we settled on a publisher in SA.
Okay. Well, it paid off. It paid off. And I wish more people would do that. But I do understand that it's expensive. I wish that there were more opportunities to do it here.
Wait, but it's not as expensive as you think.
It's not?
I know it's expensive in inverted commas.
You and your expensive.
But we spend more money in the club.
Well, yeah, I guess if you decide that this is what you want to do, then use the money on this instead of.
Yes. In a month, if you look at how much people are spending, on average, let's say if you go out and you spend every weekend, in 2-3 months, you can publish.
Oh. Well, there you go. We need more published authors then.
We do. We need more Zambian stories. However your medium is, you need the story to be told. Also, because when I was going through my journey, there was not a Zambian book on finance that I could find. The closest I found was Smart Money Woman, which is Nigeria.
Yes.
She's talking about stocks because the Nigerian stock market is happening.
Yes.
In Zambia, you buy a stock, it'll take you 2 months to sell it.
Yeah.
It's active, but it's slow.
Yeah.
So you only see a return over a long period of time. So we needed the Zambian story to be told. You read an American book, they'll tell you not to buy bonds because their bonds are 2%, 1%. In Zambia, bonds are 25%, 22%.
It's a huge difference.
Yeah.
So we need to be able to consume our own stuff. Okay. I want to pivot. We'll be winding up soon. But I think that you've made one more change.
Have I?
I think you have. In the last 2 years, I feel as though you've moved offline.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that been about? What are you doing now that is different again?
I think I'm just a lot more selective about what I share.
And when I say offline, I mean that you're doing more in-person events.
Am I?
Yeah. You're doing more speaking at different events and that sort of thing.
Okay, when I was agreeing with the offline because I feel like I am holding a lot back.
Yeah.
I feel like there was a point where I was just sharing everything. I have moved a lot more offline because there's a lot more money offline.
Is there?
Yes.
That's what I was interested in. I was interested in if it's,
Yeah, there's a lot more. It's like the online builds your brand and builds your credibility.
Right.
But the people who I work with offline will just see a post and might not even comment, like nothing. They'll just see and send an email and say, oh, in reference to, I saw you do this.
Yeah.
My organization needs this. Are you able to?
Right.
So I understand there was there's a guy called Alex Hamosi. He's like sales, marketing, building business guy. And he talks about people don't judge you on your paid content.
Right.
They judge you on your free content because that's what they consume.
Right.
But the people who consume your free content would then talk about you to now the people who will pay.
Right.
And that's been true for me.
Okay.
So yeah, I work quietly with a lot more organizations that I won't even post about.
Yeah.
But I will post because it builds credibility. It shows people that we can do it. But also because I'm still learning some things. I'm talking about personal finance, but you will see another pivot. I'm going more into business finance.
Right.
Because I am building a business and these are things that I'm learning. Okay. And I would like to share that.
That's a perfect place to end. With what you're doing next.
Yeah.
I think we've learned a lot of things. We've learned about accountability, how you're branding. When I thought about this podcast is about creative storytellers. And the first instance when I thought about the kinds of people that I wanted to have on were people who were maybe writing books, doing music, doing poetry. And then as I started thinking, and I was like, first I thought of you because you wrote the book. And I was like, she wrote a book, so it's a storytelling. And then I thought, but she's a brand. And then there's stories we tell about ourselves. And so I think that you have creatively told your own story. Are creatively telling your own story. So for me, that makes you a creative storyteller.
Thank you so much. For a long time, I felt like I lost my creative side. I think because I was so engrossed in corporate, I didn't realize that I was actually bringing my creativity in that space as well. But even just like the way corporate works, like when you are at entry level, they beat the creativity out of you. Like you have to be technical, you have to know the word, the work, because you are affecting people's lives long term.
Right.
With what we're doing. I was in finance, or I am in finance. So that's like long-term things but as you start moving up the corporate ladder, they're looking for creatives. You have to start relearning that creativity back and reapplying it into your work. So also quite recently, I've been like, oh, I'm still a creative. I didn't lose it.
You've been a creative all the way through. Okay, final question. What is a book? I see you thinking like this is a test or something. What is a book, poem, piece of art, song, something, movie, some kind of story that has either inspired you or that you feel mirrors how you live your life?
I don't know about mirroring, but the whole time you sent me that question like a week ago.
Yes.
And I kept saying, there is nothing. But I keep going back to one specific book. It's called Wuthering Heights.
Okay. Oh,
you
wow.
know it?
Yes. I'm intrigued.
First of all, can you believe that was one of my first reads? And I don't think I was even 8 years old.
That's a horror.
Yes. And it's complex. It's a complex read.
Yes.
But then at some point, because it was like Jane Austen, like the name, the Jane was like, that is me. I am a writer. I'm going to write a book.
Yes.
And it's a book that I have, over the years, I've gone back to it like several times because I tend to forget the details.
Right.
And things like that. So I keep going back to it and I keep going back to it. And I think that it was my first book that I vividly remember reading. And I was a small kid. I don't know. Somehow it stuck with me. I like reading that book and seeing somebody who's named like me.
Yeah.
I knew.
It inspired you.
Yeah. But I also like how... I like talking. Why winding me out? I like how like the classics, how they were very... There isn't a single typo in those books.
And they did those by hand.
Yes. And their English is impeccable. Yes. And you get to learn so much. Like somebody had told me, yo, you speak so well, your vocabulary. Like I've been reading Sense and Sensibility, the original version.
Yes.
I've been reading Jen Eyre since I was 7, 8 years old.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did not expect that. I was expecting, I don't know, some kind of Malcolm Gladwell or something. Not that there's anything wrong with
him.
personal development books, but I'm pleasantly surprised that she chose fiction.
I actually always read fiction. Like, I learned personal development since 2018 is when I started reading those. Yeah, when I was trying to develop myself. But I've been reading fiction. Yeah. Even my reading list for 2024, there's like a lot of fiction in there.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming. You've already told us that your next thing that you're going to do is business and finance. So we know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where can people find out more about you if they don't already follow you? Because
so we've had the website, but we are going to be a lot more active on the website because I want to be able to talk for longer. You've seen me. Yes. I talk a lot.
Yes.
So I want to be writing a lot more because I am trying to work on my next book, which will be fiction.
Okay.
But still around the subject matter. So website is janemaz.com. And then obviously Instagram is my home base. Yes. Instagram is Jane Mazimba, full handle, and Facebook, but there's a lot of scammers on Facebook, so it's a bit difficult. At least on Instagram, I'm verified, so you know the right page, and of course LinkedIn.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much for sitting with me. I've enjoyed this.
Yeah, me too.